Hello, David Zritsky for the Bond Experience. Welcome back. I got Kyle back.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I feel sort of like this is a very different type of video. You and I usually talk about movies or style or things like that. This feels like a public service message.
Well, we talk a lot.
We do.
Every once in a while.
We do.
So sometimes ideas just come out naturally.
And this is one that came up very organically. We were hanging out with friends, and people will talk about, easy, don't do that, or I've observed. This is different things that we've observed in the Bond community that we think people shouldn't do. And we're calling this "Don't Do That."
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. And maybe this will be an ongoing series as we collect things. But what we want to hear from you, and we'll remind you towards the end of this video, we want to hear your own don't do that. So there's going to be a whole bunch in the comment section, just things they shouldn't be mean, they're observations. And by the way, we are not sharing any names.
Nope.
We're not calling out any specific stories because probably some of these we've been guilty of ourselves.
Without a doubt. This is to make ourselves better.
Yeah.
Behave in a more gentlemanly-like conduct.
If we do not learn from others, especially the people that we respect, what is the point? We've all learned from our elders, our teachers, superstars, basketball players making bad decisions, maybe not so much.
Make a lot of bad decisions.
Maybe not that. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
See, that's a don't do that. But what's great about this one is I'm going to start because my voice is hoarse, and it is because my first don't do that is do not go out with a bunch of your Bond friends and go into a cigar barn that is not ventilated well and just sit there for 2 hours smoking cigars. Don't do that.
I would still do that.
You would still do that, but I'm paying the price for that.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. What, you got one?
I do. There's a lot of lifestyle, aspirational things that go hand in hand with the James Bond fandom.
You think?
Yes. A lot of these things are investments that cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
My first don't do that is don't go into debt pursuing the James Bond lifestyle. Only buy things that you can afford. Don't ruin your credit. Don't shoot too high. Put some money aside and wait and be patient. Don't go into debt. Don't do that.
Exactly. And now I'd like to do a review of this Omega watch that costs only... No. I mean, I've got to do this tongue-in-cheek because my channel leans heavily towards reviewing products. But
Right.
I always say to people, especially, young people that are trying to make their way through life and not try to over-emulate a different lifestyle, is be happy where you are.
Yes.
In your point in time in life. And if you want to make your way towards investing, and it is an investment into some of these pieces, then do so over time.
These things take time.
They do.
I mean, I certainly could not afford to wear Timberland Esser shirts when I was in my teens and 20s. Put some money aside, work hard.
It's a good one.
Just take your time, be patient, and good things will come.
They will. All right, I have one that sort of dovetails off of that. I have noticed that there are some people who will go to these Bond brands, to their locations, to their brick and mortar stores, if you will, and the brands are great. They invite everybody in, but these groups have no intention of purchasing their products. So they'll try on the pieces of clothing, leave them all astrew, drink their champagne, take their hospitality, and that to them is the experience, as opposed to these are companies.
Right.
And they will never ever tell a Bond fan or a group of Bond fans, hey, you can't come in here. But if you don't have any intention, if you're just trying to get the experience, the perception experience of shopping, but you're cosplaying the shopping as opposed to actually going to be plunking down money because they're there for transactions, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
These places are businesses.
They are.
It is a little unfair to expect the concierge service when you don't intend to have any sort of transaction.
Yeah, if you have no intention.
It's really just a waste of the other person's time.
And I've even heard a few stories from brands talking about some of these fans being rude and thinking that treating the staff of these brands in a rude way is part of the luxury allure of
Don't do that.
don't do that.
Don't do
If
that.
anything, you have to be that higher level of etiquette, politeness, and appreciation that everybody has a job out there and there's no one job more important than another. So do not do that.
Look at the James Bond films, the Daniel Craig films in particular.
Craig.
And count how many times Bond is saying thank you
Yes.
to people who work in airports,
Or lovely.
people who work in hotels.
Yeah.
He's a very polite, gracious person. Do that.
Yeah, very good. You got one?
Yes, I do, and it kind of goes with what we were just talking about when it comes to travel. A lot of these destinations are expensive places. Airfare is not cheap. Hotels are not cheap. When you are traveling, make your plans well in advance, so that way you know where you're going to be laying your head at night.
Yeah,
But
good.
don't go on a trip that you can't afford. Don't do that.
Don't do that, which kind of dovetails into that whole affordability thing.
Yes.
So I've got one, and this is about, it's free, and that is comments. If you do not like the James Bond lifestyle, don't insult that. Don't do that. If you do not like the literary Bond, if you don't like the books, don't do that. In other words, wherever people's appreciations lie, that is their opinion. That is subjective, not objective. There is no right answer, and that's the wonderful thing about the Bond community is this inclusive, not exclusive moment of just supporting and believing in people's opinions and respecting them. So do not rip people down for their opinions, and that includes rankings and what movies they like. So don't do that.
People approach James Bond fandom from a lot of different places. We all bring something to it.
Yeah.
We all take something away from it. Some people are more inclined towards lifestyle. Some people are more inclined towards the films. Some people are more inclined towards the music. One is not better than the other. This is a very large umbrella. Everyone's opinion is valid.
Yeah.
One person is not a bigger fan or a better fan than anyone else. So criticizing somebody else because they approach being a James Bond fan from a direction that's different from yours, don't do that.
Exactly. That's good. What do you got?
How about if, going with what we were just saying, if someone's favorite James Bond film is Die Another Day and you hate it, that does not make them any less of a Bond fan. Same thing with
No, that one does.
If
yeah.
well, if somebody
Do that. No, don't do that.
If somebody tells you that they're a huge James Bond fan but have never read any of the Ian Fleming novels, calling them a fake fan or saying that they're not a true Bond fan or that they're not as big of a fan as you,
That you're a connoisseur and they're not.
don't do that.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah, that's a good one. This is to all my fellow content creators out there. Do not look at other people's accomplishments, whether it's with brands or with views or with comments. Everybody's YouTube and Instagram and Facebook is relevant if you are enjoying it. It doesn't matter how many views or how many followers, if you're number one or number 1,000th of a content creator. Do not try to compare yourself in any way to anybody else. If you're having fun, there is no comparison because you're having a great time. So do not do that. Do not compare yourself with views, counts, engagement, appreciations, or likes.
Likes, clicks, and views are not the measurement that we should take from what we do engaging in James Bond social media.
Yeah.
It's more about this.
Yeah.
Interacting with like-minded people, making new friends,
Yeah.
finding something to bond over through this shared hobby. So don't measure yourself by your clicks, likes, views, or anything like that.
That's
Don't do
true.
that.
The only one that cares about likes and views and engagement are brands because to them it's transactional.
That's a transaction.
They're looking at, what's the breadth and depth of this particular channel. Us as fans shouldn't care.
No.
I follow channels that have 60 followers as much as I do that they have 60,000 followers.
Because
It
it's
doesn't
fun
matter.
to talk to them.
It's fun and just focus on what you're doing well and the little niche that you've carved out.
Agreed.
Yeah. What do you got? We're going back and forth like a tennis game.
That's a good question. Kind of going back to what we were saying before, if somebody likes Roger Moore and you like Sean Connery, that does not make them lesser of a James Bond fan than you. Don't criticize somebody because they love one particular actor or one particular film that you don't like, or you think only the Connery films are the real James Bond films, don't do that.
Don't do that. All right, I've got one, and this has to do with relationships. So I've seen some people take their significant others and their spouse and really try to peel them away from their hobby or locations or travel, as opposed to engage them. Some even keeping things from them, like certain travel and shindigs and things like that. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Try to really embrace them, or at least give them an opportunity. And I know I'm talking from experience, because I know that Danielle and I have become closer as a couple by me always being open with her about the events, giving her the opportunity to say yes or no. Give her the opportunity to say, this is too much Bond, or this is just enough Bond, or I've always wanted to go to that location. But don't try to close your Bond hobby. I think what happens is, when I hear about these disconnects with spouses or relatives or relationships and Bond fans, it's when it becomes a mystery, when they
Yes.
don't know what's going on. What do you think?
Let your friends and loved ones be themselves.
Yeah.
That's part of the fun of this. If they are a passionate James Bond fan, or they're a passionate John Barry fan, or they're a huge Ian Fleming person, let them fly that flag. Don't stifle their creativity. Don't step on their good time. Don't do that.
Don't do that. All right, I've got a health and wellness one, okay. Because I have to. So big thing is, do not start to look at health and wellness and judging a person's physical persona by their age or their ability or how much they're putting into it, like the hashtag Bond Fitness Challenge. Do it through your own revelations, what you want to do, what works for you, basically. Don't do it what others are doing, unless you can pick up the trades. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Here's a big one.
Oh.
This one might get a little, not controversial. I think
Oh, now?
it's the opposite of controversial.
Okay.
Bringing politics into our James Bond hobby, or using current events or politics or religion or anything like that as something to fight over, or to keep you away from your friends, or to break apart relationships in this fan community. Don't do that. There's no place for that here.
I love that. Do not do that. Thank you so much for introducing that, because it is a policy, you know this, of mine, that I do not talk about politics. I don't talk about religion. And I'll tell you why. It's not just for my channel's sake. And I want everybody to feel that they are welcome.
Yes.
But in my life, like, I don't care if my friends have voted a certain way, or they believe a certain way, etc. They're my friends.
Correct.
We have been through experience, and that's what drives us together. So on a channel or a discussion, entering into politics and religion can only split things.
Agreed. This is not the high school cafeteria. We're all fans of this fictitious character.
Yes.
It's not life and death. It does not have to be, there doesn't have to be any animosity in the Bond community over James Bond.
No,
Don't do that.
Leave it to yourself.
Same thing, don't assume that only a certain demographic can be a James Bond fan. Anyone can be a James Bond fan. It doesn't matter your race, your background, your socioeconomic standing, whether you're a man, whether you're a woman. Don't assume that there's only one type of Bond fan, or only one type of person can be a true Bond fan. Don't do that. Yeah. Anybody can be a James Bond fan. And a James Bond fan could be somebody who loves James Bond music, somebody who has only seen the Daniel Craig films, somebody who only likes the books.
I like that. You sounded very passionate on that one. It was just like, wow. But that's a very good one. All right, I do have a don't do that. One of the things that we talk about, as James Bond fans, that we've observed is, because it's kind of around, we just talked about nutrition, this one's kind of around mental health.
Sure.
And it is kind of a serious one, because a lot of people will write to me, or I've talked about this in some of the podcasts, but don't keep things to yourself if you're feeling discontent, or blue, or upset about us not having a James Bond film. We've tried to encourage people to talk to each other, because finding our tribe, finding the people that we can speak to, really staves off things like mental illness and incapacities. And so if you're keeping a lot of these things to yourself, do not do that. Share, increase who your relationships are and who you're being with.
Yes.
Trust me, it has a really great positive side effect. So when it comes to don't do that, do not share things with people.
Agreed. Having conversations with other fans is what's keeping the fires burning of James Bond. We're not
Absolutely.
really getting anything from the official channels, so this is what is keeping James Bond alive.
Yeah. And speaking of James Bond, you got a really good one.
Yes. Don't try to keep up, and this is an interesting one for me to talk about because it is how I make my living.
Perfect.
It's how I make my living. Don't try and keep up with James Bond's drinking habits. Now, I'm a guy who likes to have a drink or two or three. I've had a couple with you before. We had a few last night,
Oh,
but we were very responsible.
we were actually.
There was no impaired driving or anything like that. Don't overdo it.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
Don't do that. That's very good. And we've seen some people, whether they, birthdays or, just trying to emulate Bond by drinking 6 Vespers. That doesn't work for a human.
It's hard to do. And
Yeah.
and I'm sure we've both had 1 or 2 more than we should have in the past. That does
Way
happen.
in the past, though.
But don't overdo it. Don't be a drunk idiot. Don't do that.
Wow, that could be like the PSA of the year. So
Don't
we're gonna
be a drunk idiot.
we're gonna end on that, but we will be back for more of these. I think this will be kind of a running scenario,
This is
kind of
kind
a
of fun.
series, and we'll think of dozens more as it goes forward.
Maybe it could be don't make a video telling people what not to do.
When you've done it all,
Don't
do
do
that. Yeah, we'll come back. No, we're gonna hide all of our indiscretions.
It was a lot of fun.
Kyle, thank you so much.
Thank you.
What a joy. And this has been David Zaritsky for the Bond Experience. Do have a great time. Take care. Thanks for watching the Bond Experience. If you like what you saw, why don't you subscribe to the channel by clicking this button right here. We'll keep you up on everything new that's happening in the world of Bond. And speaking of something new, here's something new just for you because we know you so well. Talk to you soon.